Good morning.
What's up?
Should I get you another cup, man?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I just need it.
Ike Gazaryan.
Gazaryan,
Last
yes.
name. Where are you from?
Armenian, born in Azerbaijan, raised in Uzbekistan, Russia,
Where in Uzbekistan?
Armenia, Samarkand.
No kidding.
Yeah. You guys all Bukhara. You guys Bukhara mostly.
Yes.
Bukharian Jews. Samarkand,
Mm-hmm. And you moved to the U.S. when?
98.
How old were you?
14, baby.
So you grew up here, man.
Yeah.
You grew up here, yeah.
I-
San Diego straight up?
No, San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
San Francisco. I moved here, San Diego, when I was 30.
From San Fran.
Yeah.
I see.
And I actually, in 2010, I moved back to Russia.
Where?
Moscow. Yeah. So we moved there in 98, but in 2010, I moved back to Russia. And I was supposed to do 1 year. I had a 1 year contract with this company. And I ended up doing 3 years instead. That's how much I loved it.
What did you do over there?
So I worked for an insurance firm.
Uh-huh.
It was like an British American firm. We would insure like British and American businesses, Western businesses, German companies and things like that. And I was doing stand-up comedy in Moscow too.
Oh, you were started back then.
That's when I
No
started.
kidding.
Yeah.
In Russian?
In Russia.
Tell us a joke in Russian.
The worst.
Tell us a joke.
Почему Путин такой плохой, да?
Да.
No, I went there in 2010, but there was no comedy scene, stand-up comedy.
In Russia?
Yeah, there was no stand-up comedy before 2010. It was something else. They would do like two people playing off some sort of a situation or whatever.
More like an act versus
exactly.
Like a
They didn't have
versus,
stand-up comedy. And we started it, me and a bunch of other people, we started stand-up
You know how that
comedy.
makes Russia sound though, right? You say that.
That they didn't
They're
have
not funny people.
Well,
but there's a lot of humor in Russia.
dude, yeah, the Germans are not funny people, period, blядь. There's like almost no comedy in Germany, but they're starting now. But in Russia, 2010 is when stand-up comedy began, and it hasn't fully taken off till 2015. So 2015 is when it like really went booming. And now they have more stand-up comedy clubs than we do in US.
Right.
Moscow has more comedy clubs than any city in the United States.
How does the comedy differ?
There's certain things you can't talk about. So there's not really freedom of speech per se.
Really?
In Russia. Yeah, well, you can't talk about the war. You can't talk about the politicians. God forbid you mention Putin's name. You can't make fun of religions. Like, you make fun of Muslims, you'll have Khabib's family members come after you. Like, you have Dagestani Chechens. Yeah, all of them will come after you right away. And they'll beat you up and they'll make you apologize on camera for what you have said. You can go to jail also, because Russia has a law that if you hurt the feelings of certain race, not even minorities, certain religion groups. It could be any religion group. Christians, Muslims, whoever, Jews. They don't seem to care too much about the Jews, mostly Christians and Muslims. If you hurt any one of their feelings, there's an actual law. They'll put you away for up to 2 years in jail.
What do you think about that?
I think it's BS. I think you should be able to make fun of anything. If it's funny, yeah. If it's not funny, people are not laughing.
But
then
the whole argument is, you know, the other side's argument, right? It's like there's is there a fine line to comedy? Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, if it's for me, it's whether it's funny or not. If it's funny, it has place to go. If it's not funny, if it's just hateful stuff you're saying, and
it could be funny for you, but not funny for those people.
It should be funny for most of the people, I think.
But if it's not, right?
If it's not, then yeah, absolutely.
If you have a whole nation of, let's say, Muslims, right, and they get offended from a cartoon,
yeah,
should you keep making fun of it? There's like 2 billion of them.
Yeah.
This is not one person.
Are you talking
with
about specifically the Hebdo, the French cartoons?
Does numbers make a difference, or is it more like if one person gets offended, that's okay, we can make fun of it. If it's a whole nation of people, then maybe you shouldn't. Do you know what I mean?
No, I know what you mean. It's just whether it's funny or not to most people. If it's only one person laughing, the person who wrote it, then obviously that's a problem. But if it's funny to most of the people, I say fucking do it. I don't care. Like,
Okay, I'll give you an example. So, for instance, if you're gonna go to some, I don't know, a little town where it's mostly like, white nationalists. Okay.
call them a redneck in their
And
face.
just, well, not really, but like, let's say you talk about things that they don't like, for example, I don't know, you talk about Jews or blacks or whatever, and you make fun of them, they'll laugh. You'll have a whole group that will laugh their ass off at your jokes. Am I right?
Yeah.
But if you use the same joke somewhere else, it's not going to be as funny.
Yeah, I get that all the time because I'm kind of edgy with my comedy. And so there's specific liberals don't really like my jokes.
Right.
Okay. And I can sense that. Sometimes I start my joke with I'll go up and I'll test out the waters. And the way I test out the waters, I'll come out and say, United States is the greatest fucking country in the world. 90% of the people will not support that in the audience in United States. Some venues, not all of them. Right. Most of the time people are like, fuck yeah, America, right? I'll test that joke out. And if nobody's clapping or if only a few people are clapping, then you have self-hating Americans sitting there.
But what is your own self-moral compass? Does that make sense? Like, do you only test your jokes according to what they react to? Does that make sense?
No, I'll test it out a few times.
But test it out on who? Do you have your own compass of what's right or no?
Yeah, I do, of course. I do. And there's certain lines I won't cross, but I will most definitely cross. Yeah, fuck yeah. I don't care.
Are you trying to get attention? What is it?
No, it's not attention. It's funny to me. I love comedy that's on the verge. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll even play to the people that I'm serving my comedy, get them on my side, and then hook them with something that they don't expect, something that they won't like. And so they'll be like, oh my God. Right. But then first you got to get them to like you. First few minutes. You get them to like you. I'm on your side. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. And then you fuck them over and flip the script.
It's interesting. Comedy allows you to do that, right? I don't know of any other way that you can present material, ideas, philosophy, moral, whatever, ethics in a funny way, challenge the status quo, all of that, and still be accepted per se. People, it's not that easy, and comedy does that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's really difficult. It's one thing to go out and speak publicly. Like people have number one fear of is public speaking. And it's another thing to get them. Yeah, it's a good one. It's another thing to get them to laugh at what you're saying. Right. So, but I absolutely love putting people in uncomfortable situations. I love to put myself in uncomfortable situations.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking that I think you were on the Tony. What's his name? Kill Tony.
Yeah,
Tony
Hinchcliffe. Tony.
Yeah. That guy's brilliant, man. I actually did. I saw his roast. First time I saw him was on that Tom Brady roast.
Yeah.
My God, man. I was like, there's a star born right there. Boom. He killed it.
Yeah, he killed. But he's been a star for way longer than that.
I know. But he did a number. And nobody could touch him on that roast.
Yeah, nobody could.
I was like awed.
Well, Nick Glazer was the star of that show. He was also for
me he was the punchline. Okay, for me. Okay.
Tony Hinchcliffe was amazing, but I think Nick Glazer took that cake that night. But they were both on top. Yeah.
So when you were on his show, and that's what I wanted to mention is that you take the punches yourself. I mean, I heard him, hello, I Pushkin, and he talking like this. And he's like, I'm like, and you're there, you're taking it. You're not saying, oh, you're offending my people, or you're offending my accent or anything like that.
I don't give a fuck.
That's okay, right? It's not a one-sided.
You can't be offended when you're doing comedy, period. Like, there are comics who get offended.
But is it okay to say boo if I don't like it? Like if I don't like something and the audience doesn't like something, and if they boo you, you're gonna stop making that joke?
No, I'll just know that.
No.
I've never been booed off stage. People had walked off a couple of times. It was the beginning of the show, and they put me on as a host, and I came in and I was like, okay, and I started swinging right away. Right away. I think the very first joke or second joke was very offended, and 2 or 3 people got up and they're like, oh my God. And fuck them, because...
Who's your audience? Like, who do you attract most of? Who do you see?
Conservative Americans absolutely love everything I have to do.
But you
jokes.
Isn't it mostly in Russian?
No, English.
Really?
90% of my comedy is in English. I do Russian comedy
if people
too. But
YouTube you, it's Ike Gazaryan.
Ike Gazaryan, yeah. My Instagram has tons of clips, and I have both Russian and English. It doesn't matter. Both of the languages are easy. It comes natural to me, so I do it in both.
How do you bridge the gap? Because when you're thinking in Russian about the jokes, and then you translate them, or do you just kind of in your mind?
So I've learned how to switch between the 2 languages where it doesn't bother me. Before I had an issue. So before I used to do it only in Russian, right? And then a year ago I started doing it in English, and I'm like, why am I only doing it in Russian? So every time I write something in Russian, I will not translate, I will rewrite it in English.
And you get lost in translation a little bit in your mind, or no?
No, I don't get lost in translation. I used to have a problem before where, because I didn't do enough stand-up, when I would do an English set, I would try to remember what I said in Russian set and try to bring that Russian comedy into English, and then I learned not to do that. So now I live in a world where I just turn myself off completely when I'm on stage. So when I'm doing my English comedy, I don't think about the Russian comedy. I don't think of how I wrote it in Russian. I have a separate English stuff that I wrote, and I just do that. And then the same thing with the Russian. So when I just come out, I don't think of that. And pretty much almost every bit that I have works in both languages. There are some that are so Russian that they just cannot be translated.
Where do the 2 characters overlap? So when you're performing in Russian, it's a certain character, right? It's a certain mental state. And then in English, it's a little bit different.
They're very similar.
They're similar because you overlap them.
Yeah.
You did. So, because that's the funny part. Because if you were full English, it wouldn't be as funny. Because you're adding a lot of, I think, non-American concepts and ideas.
That's what gets people excited, and that's what they want to hear. Is like sometimes I'll come out and I'll be like, I'm an immigrant, and then I'm start telling them it's storytelling.
Yeah.
My comedy is literally storytelling made from stories that I've been in, that I've seen in my life, or a certain observation, and they're like, oh, this is a new angle that I haven't seen. And so typically I have an audience there sitting and they're really listening to what I'm saying. Plus, I have the way I time my comedy, I have punchlines every 10 seconds. So people are laughing every 10 to 12 seconds, and it keeps them engaged. Because if you're doing comedy and people are not laughing and you get one joke a minute or something, and you just...
Are you trying to take it outside of the U.S.?
I have already. I've done tours in Europe in Russian language. It was a Russian comedy. My buddy and I did a European tour. We did 17 cities in 21 days. It was great.
Wow.
You can't remember which city was what because you change cities every day.
This was in Russian?
In Russian comedy, yeah. Sasha Nizlobin.
Well, Russians are pretty much everywhere. I mean, Russian speakers. It could be Ukrainians. It could be all kinds of the Russian.
They're all over Europe.
All over, yeah.
Not all over Europe.
It's
all over everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, except Africa. Well, their military is probably there, but not. But yeah, dude, it was great. The Russians are everywhere. So we did the Russian comedy tour was in Europe, and then I've done a lot of cities here in US as well. But as of lately, I've been concentrating more on English. But so I do like usually 5-6 shows a week in English, and then
5-6 shows a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, weekly.
Twice a day.
Wow.
So last week I think we did 7 even.
No kidding.
November was
Are you with a group?
Best month. No, I have a group like my Russian comedy buddies, where whenever they do comedy, they invite me. I have few like famous comic friends, and whenever they do shows, they invite me. But as far as stand-up comedy is pretty much a solo thing. However, like I have friends here in San Diego in comedy clubs that like me and know me, and so they invite me to do 10, 12, 15-minute shows. And so this last week we had Madhouse, 4 shows, 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturdays. And then we did a show on Thursday and then popped in another show. So I did 3 shows on Saturday. It was pretty awesome.
It feels comfortable for you?
Yeah, I used to get nervous as hell. It's just like you with the music. I'm sure the first 10, 20, 50 times you come on stage, you get jitters. But now it's like, I can't wait for the fucker to come off the stage so I can go up next. So it doesn't bother me anymore.
Do you notice a certain, I mean, you said you did a bunch of cities already around, a bunch of countries. And do you notice that obviously certain jokes work with certain crowds? And
oh yeah, absolutely.
You notice that, huh?
Yeah. So what I do is before I do the set, I would come out and look at people.
Oh, really?
And I could, yeah. You basically you're scanning the crowd, right. And I'm like, okay, who do we have here? And if you have a lot of, I don't know how censored you are, but if you have a lot of lesbians sitting in the crowd, then you know you got to take it a little easier because they get butthurt most. The gay guys fucking love dark humor. They don't care. I love dark humor. Super ultra liberal people, or if you see a bunch of lesbians in the crowd, then you can tell them apart.
I see.
They typically.
So you're still somewhat tiptoeing.
Yeah.
That still exists. Would you probably say that it's across the board at the moment?
I'll just do one. I like if I'm seeing a super liberal crowd, then I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna do this and this and this joke. I'll still let them have it fully. What I'll try to do is I'll try to get them to like me, and then I'm gonna slowly start shoving it down their throat to the point where they're gonna fucking enjoy it towards the end. You know, of course, some of them are gonna be butthurt no matter what. You can't please everybody, and I don't have that type of comedy, and I hate
censorship.
I hate friendly comedy. Like I can't do that friendly comedy. Oh, my kid is this and this and this or that. If I'm talking about my mother-in-law, I'm fucking her in the fucking set, almost. You know, like, I don't care. She doesn't get butthurt. If my mother-in-law doesn't get butthurt from my jokes, nobody should.
How long is a set? Usually?
Usually 10 to 12 minutes. 8 to 12 is the usual set, but I've done an hour 10 before, too. I've done hour 10, I've done half an hour. When we were in Europe, I would do 30 minutes.
How much of it is improv? Or would you say that it's just...
So on my sets, none of it is improv. I don't really... I don't like to do crowd work too much. I'll come out and say hi, but ask, hello, how are you, this and that. But I usually don't like to. So usually the first comic, second comic that go up, so if you have a whole lineup, usually first comic is the one that's going to do the crowd work. Mm-hmm. I'm never the first comic. They never put me as the first comic. I'm always usually either the last or second before last, where the crowd is already warm and you can go with the harder jokes. Yeah, they know better now not to put me up first. Because I don't like to talk to people. I write actual jokes. I don't need to go up there and be like, oh, you're a dentist. Oh, you like to numb people's mouth.
What do you enjoy more, Russian or English?
I do both.
But what do you enjoy more?
It depends on the crowd. So I do a lot more English now. So whenever I get the Russian gig, I like it more because you don't get to do those that much. So I want to say I like to do Russian more because I don't get too many chances to do Russian as much. But I'll fucking take a good crowd. Doesn't matter what language it is. A great crowd is a great crowd, you know. And when you have over 300 people in the audience, those are my favorite. Don't get me wrong, I've done in front of 10, 12 people too and had an amazing time, especially when you click. But anything over 300, because you get that energy back. Yeah. It's like you give them your energy and they give it back to you. And the more they laugh, the harder they clap. You're just like,
Yes, absolutely.
Take it back.
Like any show.
Take it back. Yeah,
I get
exactly.
it.
You're a musician. You know
Yes,
exactly
yes,
what I'm talking
yes.
about.
What about these times right now? Traveling? Are you allowed? Are you able to travel to Russia? Let's say perform?
Well,
Or not really.
I haven't been to Russia since 2013, but I just need to get a visa because I have a U.S. passport. I don't have
But
a
you
Russian
can
passport.
do it at the moment if
Yeah.
you need to. There's no problems.
No,
No,
there's no problem.
But you can't make certain jokes.
I'm not flying to Ukraine to do jokes. That they have a problem. Obviously, they're at war and then there's no flying. You have to take trains and things like that. But Russia is open. You just can't fly directly. You have to fly through Turkey or Dubai.
What's your most successful joke? What did you notice was that hit the hardest? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Out of all of them.
So I have this one joke that everybody loves, especially gay people.
Okay.
Because my family moved to United States from Russia in 1998. And out of all the cities in US, my homophobic father picked San Francisco.
I see.
There are only three types of people that live in San Francisco. It's gays, Asians, and gay Asians. And it's a simple joke, just play on words, but they love it.
Right.
I do have another one that I really love. It goes like this. Come on, I'm like, United States is the greatest fucking country in the world. Yeah. I'm like, why even travel anywhere else outside US when we have everything here? Like, I don't need to go to Thailand. Why? So a lady boy can offer me sex? I fucking live in California. Like, our girls have bigger dicks. And that,
Right.
I mean, all of them. I love all the jokes that I do, and some you love more, some you love less.
So it's definitely a conservative material.
It's definitely conservative material.
But I can see why, gay guys would be into that. I can see why they would like it.
Well, I have a lot of bits about certain things about. Not all of my jokes are about gay people, but there are some stuff, and the gay guys love it. I make fun of them, and they fucking love it. I have jokes when I make fun of Indians, and you have an Indian crowd, and they're laughing their ass off. They love it. But some white liberal woman in the crowd is gonna get mad for those Indian guys and is gonna get offended. And the Indians are fucking laughing. And I've tested it out a bunch of times where I'm like, I have this Indian joke and it hits hard, but they fucking love it. They're laughing all the time.
Interesting.
And I always so first you make fun of them and then you give them an olive branch. You take it back. I don't hate all the Indians. I only hate the ones that call me. And then you hit them again. It's hard to hate 2 billion people. I've tried. Like, you just play back and forth with their emotions, and that's what it is. You take them, you give them a little bit, then you make fun of them, then you take it back. So it's not like you're like, even in my own jokes, I could make fun of like gay people and then do something gay in the joke where I'm like, I'm not gonna say I'll suck your dick, but like pretty close.
How do you manage, your comedy and the restaurant, which is you kind of what I noticed is basically you're trying to mesh it all together because you're trying to find, I don't know, it's like it seems like your life is just interesting. You have things happening on all fronts, whether it's your business or.
So I went full into comedy, full retarded into comedy like a year ago. I started doing it 2 years ago. Russian comedy, and then English comedy I started doing a year ago. And during that time, my restaurant's been doing really bad pretty much the whole thing. Once the war started in Ukraine, owning a Russian restaurant in California is not something that's profitable because people stopped coming. They're like, oh.
But who's attacking you? You're not exactly Russian.
Americans.
Why? Why do
Because
they care?
every car has a Ukrainian flag. Every fucking neighborhood has Ukrainian flags. Every other house has Ukrainian flags. Support Ukraine. Russia's the bad guy. And people stopped coming.
What does that have to do with the Pushkin restaurant?
Because it's Russian. Do you remember when 9/11 happened? How many Afghan and Muslim or restaurants closed down because of that? A ton. Americans are stupid in that way, where they think, okay, we're going to support this country. This country is not good. Let's not support their business either. So people stopped coming to eat.
I see.
And the ones that didn't stop coming, continued coming, would stop taking pictures inside, because I've seen people take pictures in our restaurant, post it on social media, tag us, and then their friends or someone else would write on their profile, why are you supporting a Russian place? As if we're sending the fucking money that we make to Ukraine, not to Ukraine, to Russia, to fight the Ukraine. It's
the
stupid.
logic is so weird.
There's no logic
you're
behind
literally,
it.
It's a cultural thing you're presenting. It's not a Russian embassy. This is not a Russian embassy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a cultural thing that happened. That you're kind of like presenting as an experience. It's kind of odd that people think
It's
that
kind of
way.
odd, but then you can make examples where it would make sense. Say you like a Persian restaurant that you like, and then let's say tomorrow Iran attacks Israel all of a sudden.
Yeah, but you're not standing
And-
there in
and
a
it's not-
restaurant saying, "Russia, go fuck
No,
Ukraine."
no, exactly.
That's not what you're saying.
You're not what you're saying, but when you go there, it might not even be that, but there might be some Persian people over there saying stuff, and you might feel uncomfortable. And Americans were that way. They were like, "Oh, that's a Russian." We had a bunch of one-star reviews, people leaving reviews. This place is Russian. Don't go there. Blah 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 blah. Dude, people call us on the phone and like just talk shit. Fuck you, you Russian piece of shit. I'm like, I'm Armenian. My employees are Ukrainian. They don't understand. No. Overall, a person is smart. People are stupid. That's my what I think of it. And there were a lot of people that were just like, well, I don't want to go eat Russian food. And the media and they spun everything in a way where like, this is a bad guy, and Ukraine is this good person, and this bad person is attacking this good person without realizing that there's a deep history in between them. There's a reason why this happened. There's certain reasons why it got to it, and Russia definitely attacked, but it's not unprovoked. There's reasons behind it, and people don't want to know what the reasons are. They're just like, oh, we're going to support Ukraine. And where's that support now? American support only can last a year or two. Everybody's counting their money now. They're tired of supporting Ukraine. They're tired of spending their fucking money. And now look, you got the new, now everybody's starting to hate Ukraine. Americans, their support doesn't last too long. And nowadays, people have such a short attention span. So much stuff is happening at the same time that people can't concentrate on one thing for longer than a specific time. And so my Ukrainian friend and I were just having this conversation at the bar. We were performing, we were doing a gig. And I'm telling him that, hey, Americans do not support Ukraine as much as they used to. Right. And we're speaking Russian. And this... two big American dudes come up to us. They're like, hey, what language are you guys speaking? Is that Russian? I'm like, yeah, we're speaking Russian. They're like, oh, I love Russia. High five. He high fives me, gives me a hug, and says, fuck Ukraine. I'm like, oh shit. And I know like my buddy is Ukrainian and he's right behind me. Then he turns around to him and he's like trying to high five him. He says, fuck Ukraine, and try to high five him. My buddy's like, no, I'm Ukrainian. He's like, you Ukrainian? Fuck you. And they start talking shit to him to the point they're like, let's go outside. We're going to beat you up. And I'm like, hey, like this is my friend. I'm like, let me come out with you. Let me talk to you, because we're normal. He's like, no, I want to beat the fuck out of your friend. And I'm like, no, you're not. Like, and like, they argued a little bit, and then the dudes left. It's
no kidding.
Yeah, it happened like as we were talking about that. Hey, I don't think Americans support Ukraine as much anymore. And next thing you know, like these two dudes try to beat him up for being Ukrainian. Because the money, at the end of the day, Americans only care about their fucking money. At the end of the day, it's all about the money. And
is it?
For Americans, yeah. I mean, for anyone, it always ends up being costing money. And, a lot of people don't understand that the United States is just getting rid of their old weapons. It's not like they're giving them actual cash. They're financing them to give them the shitty weapons that they don't want to use anymore because we're making new weapons, and they're testing those. They're giving those old weapons to fight the Russians. For America, this is a great thing because they're killing Russians. They're making Russia weak by not sending their own soldiers. They're using Ukrainians as a pawn to kill Russians. And they don't give a fuck about Russians or Ukrainians. To them, it's the same type of people. Because Ukrainians, if you put a Ukrainian and Russian next to each other, can you tell which one who's who?
I can a little bit, because I'm from there. But I don't think majority of people can.
Dude, if you dress them the same clothes,
yes,
and they're standing right there, unless
yes.
they have a specific Ukrainian haircut that's like symbolic for Ukraine,
right.
You will not know. Same thing with the girls. Amazing, gorgeous women. You won't be able to tell who's who. Russian, Belarusian, or Ukrainian. Right. They're the same thing. It's just like try to tell a difference between Armenian, Azerbaijani, and Georgian guy. A lot of times it'd be mixed genes that they look pretty much the same. It's hard to say.
What do you see culturally happening between all of the different countries that were part of the Soviet Union? You know, the cultures that exist outside of that region here, mm-hmm. and other parts of the world. I mean, from what I found, mostly we're pretty friendly with each other.
Yeah.
We kind of like there's a certain connection, which was the Russian Soviet Union, which was the connection. I mean, you know what I mean? And do you think this war changes that?
The war definitely changed this between the Russians and Ukrainians. Yeah. There are other nations that look at that and learn a lesson of some sort, smaller countries. Like Russia had the problem with Georgia before. They had the problem, obviously, with Ukraine. They're always meddling with their neighbors. But the United States does the same thing. Any big country does the same thing. China does the same thing with neighbors around it. The United States does it with its own neighbors and the rest of the world. Russia does it also within their grasp. So I've done a lot of comedy in front of Russian-speaking immigrants from different countries. Most of the people have the same mentality. Thank you. Especially like people our age, 40 and up. Yes. They were raised in Soviet Union back then, so they have the same mentality. Yes. However, the new generation is completely different, and obviously they're Americanized. So yeah, like our kids, for instance, my kids don't even want to speak Russian. They only speak Russian because grandma doesn't speak English well, and she makes sure that they speak Russian to her. But they were born here. They're already different kids.
I noticed that there's a big reminiscence towards the old Soviet Union. Those times. But
I think
like the people that I just mentioned that I met that were refugees from Afghanistan and Dagestan and Kazakhstan and all these, and Baku, and like I meet them, I'm talking to them, I'm like that, and we're talking like we feel like, oh my God, remember those times? We went there, it was, you came to us, we came to you. It was fun. It was kind of like it's funny now we look at it reminiscing as a great time.
Yeah, but
But it wasn't that great per se.
It wasn't that great. But I don't think they reminisce those times. I think they reminisce their youth, because they were young back then, yes. And they were full of strength. And you put them back in their time for a little bit, no cell phones, none of that. They would feel uncomfortable right away. They'd be like, okay, I'm young. I think because they're young, they listen to music, they dance, they had fun. I think the only thing they reminisce is them being young. Because if you remember how boring it was, we had one TV channel. I mean, there were certain great things about it, and we had fun. We would, like Bukharian communities, big families, everybody hanging out, tons of cousins. You didn't need most of it. You were having fun. You were playing. As a kid, You were having fun.
Right.
But you didn't know whether your parents were struggling or not to even put food on your table and do all of those things, because you're a kid, you don't care. You're just like, you ate and you go and you have fun. But for parents, it was difficult. stress of moving to this country, stress of currency, even Soviet Union collapsing. You can't keep dollars before that. You had to, like in Uzbekistan, we're from the same place. I remember my dad had to go. You couldn't get dollars in the bank. You had to go to the black market and change it. And the official is like, let's say the official 10 rubles per dollar to buy, but when you go, you'd have to do 40 rubles. It was like 4 or 5 times more you have to spend to get dollars from the side, and you couldn't show that you had money back then, because then you can get robbed. People were afraid to show that they had any wealth during Soviet Union or even past Soviet Union when it collapsed. And so I think that's one of the reasons why Russians, after Soviet Union collapsed, start going out of control and balling out of control and buying all these things, because their whole life they haven't had anything. And then now all of a sudden they have all these things they can afford. Not all of them, but that's why you have the golden toilets and this terrible fucking interior design in some of the people's homes. Like, you sit on a golden toilet, really? How stupid are you?
Yeah. I remember I was in Beijing, and one of the head students of Beijing University, he was the son of the Ministry of Finance, I believe, of China. And he took us out, just showing us around and this and that, because we were there on business. And he found out that we're from Russia, previous Soviet Union, and he's like, he goes, China is kind of like that, but we are already running like America, capitalism, but we are not doing it in an abrupt way, the way
the way Americans do
the
it.
way that Russians did it in '89.
Yeah, they're slowly integrating. 100%.
Yeah, he's like, we can't do that because we saw what happened with the Russian collapse. What's his name?
Yeltsin.
Yeah,
No, Gorbachev. Yeah.
Gorbachev. He's a Gorbachev. It's funny that he pointed that out. It's like, so his claim was like, don't look at us like we're not communists.
How old is this guy? Was he your age?
Yeah, he was a young guy.
So he's just repeating his dad's words, the Minister of Finance, pretty much, right? Which is, you're getting that information from the main
Right.
source. It's 100% correct.
Right.
See, good thing about Chinese people is they look 100 years ahead.
Right.
Americans look 20 years ahead. Russians look 2 years ahead. And yeah, collapse of the Soviet Union was the biggest mistake. They should have kept it.
People weren't ready for it.
People weren't ready for it.
You're taking a prisoner and you're just giving him everything, food. He's just gonna throw up.
Yeah.
It's too much food if he's hungry like that.
It's also they could have avoided it, but there was multiple things. The war in Afghanistan. There was a lot of stuff that brought to the collapse of the Soviet Union, and when everyone's like, "Oh, we're gonna do our own thing," but for 10 years it was pretty bad. The moment Soviet Union collapsed, the first 4 or 5 years was terrible because they kept changing the money. People lost all of their life savings. There were so many terrible stories from that.
Yeah.
And China's doing it the smart way, of course.
Yes.
They look at what other people are doing. I think that's the next superpower. If they already are the big, probably superpower.
You think so? You think China's gonna be the BRICS?
They're already number one. They're already meddling. Everybody that's around China dances to China's tune. Japan and Korea are afraid. Taiwan is obviously afraid. And they have their pockets in Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, all of that region they already control. Then they're controlling a lot of stuff in Europe. They're buying out tons of stuff in the United States. And they're controlling a lot of Africa too. So, because they have money. They'll come in, they'll give you money, they'll let you borrow money. And then when you can't pay back, they take it. Exactly.
Yeah. I know that's what they're doing. I don't know. From what I'm hearing is that, they're calling, from my Chinese contacts in China, they're saying, Ellie, China is just a paper dragon. And it's just makes a lot of noise or whatever, but
there's 6 times more people in China than there are in the United States. It's
not always the volume of people, though, right? Like, what does America deal with? Brains, man. Everybody comes here.
A lot of people come here. Yeah.
That's what it is. And the world is always, the future is always in the mind, in my opinion. It's not in the, where we're going right now is not how many hands you have. Do you know what I mean?
Mine's yes, but look at how lazy a lot of Americans are. We've pretty much gave all of our production out because it costs too much to make it here. Everything is being, even like companies don't even have employees here. They subcontract, they find people who speak English in different countries. Like you call the tech service, it's always Indian, Pakistani.
Well, you have to focus on it's like you can't, if you're running a business and you're a business owner, a great structure for a business is where you're focusing your best.
No, of course.
And if you look at the world as a business, America is the business owner.
Yeah.
And everybody else is a part of that business. It's like, well, you can't have the guy now doing dishwasher unless the dishwasher doesn't show up. You know what I'm saying? I get it, but it's just where America stands.
Yeah.
It has to pick its where it has to focus on. And it has the most brilliant minds from around the world coming here for that reason.
A lot of them, yeah.
So, okay.
They come here, but then we don't, and we produce some of the most amazing people. However, if you take over the mass, like the IQ level of people in the United States versus IQ of those in Russia, China, or any other world, no doubt. So that's what they have to do, is they have to bring. Yeah, sad. You, dude. Like, I remember when I was in Russia, I had chemistry in 5th grade, and they would make us remember by heart the table of elements, every element. The consistency of the element, all of that we had to remember. Now, I came to the United States, 10th grade, we had chemistry in 11th grade. And they were teaching us in 11th grade the stuff that I was learning in 5th grade in Russia. Chemistry, physics, all of that, math, like, we make our son, we take him to Kuman, he takes like extra classes to make sure that he's way more advanced than his regular school. People in China, schools in China, same thing. They're a lot more harder on education. Here now it's like, oh, math is racist, or this is racist. Have you heard that the stuff, the math is, dude, it's...
The question is, it's not, what's that word in Russia? Zubrit.
Like,
that's the problem. The problem is you're thinking that where do you put the value? If you think the value is you being a machine and memorizing a bunch of formulas, and yes, great, you studied in grade 1, and like the Chinese and the Japanese, I guess to some extent they're like, tick, 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 tick. Okay, that's great, but the future is not in that. The future is in the creative.
You can have a calculator do the same thing.
Yes. So
But those certain things does make your brain work. The more you try to remember, the harder you make your brain work, the better it is for you.
Depends what kind of functions you do with your brain. If you do analytical functions, you're right. But memorization, also nice. There is some value to it. Obviously, for example, if I meet 50 people and I remember all their names as soon as I meet them, there's a huge value in that in business.
100%.
So that's what I'm saying. So there is a level of memorization, or just we're solving a problem, we're talking about a math problem or any issue, right? And I just remember this time I can run a number quickly, or remember history. But there's massive value in that. I'm with you on that one. But I think the bigger value is still in the ability to have a perspective, analyze, criticize, critique, be creative. I think that is a bigger asset. Problem solving.
Yeah,
which is, I think, is bigger.
Using your brain overall, not just for 2-second fucking reels. That's what I think what's happening. This new fucking new
that
youth,
is a problem.
Man. People are not.
Well, they're banning TikTok,
right? They're gonna ban TikTok. Something else is gonna come out. They have Instagram stories. Everybody just scrolling through, and that's the problem. Is your brain no longer can take in information and keep it. Reading, using your brain. Even with the comedy, if I may, I remember when I just started 2 years ago. I usually have a pretty good memory. Like, my mom would make me memorize Russian literature, stихи. I would memorize them, and I did that as a kid. So I would always have a great time to like songs, anything I listened to a couple of times, I'll remember. And so when I started doing comedy, I'm like, how do I memorize my stand-up? How do I memorize my stand-up and keep it up? And the more I started writing and the more I started saying and the more I started repeating it, it became easier. I remember when I just started it, I would have to read the same stand-up thing 50, 60 times to remember it by heart. Now I can 3 or 4 times and I remember it. It's because you start using your brain as a certain thing. And same thing with songs, remembering the songs, reading this, singing the songs. For you, it's just you have to use your brain in order for it. It's a muscle. And if you don't use it as a muscle, if you just use it as a goldfish, you're going to be that fucking goldfish. And
I see what you're saying.
Kids nowadays...
Would you implement it on a national level as like put systems in place as laws and say, by law, you're only allowed an hour a day?
Well, we cannot do that.
You can't do that.
You can't do that. But for our kids, we can. Like,
well, they're trying to take that right away too.
Yeah, we do no iPad. On weekdays, we don't give the kid the iPad.
Right.
Only on the weekends or on the weekday, maybe like 30 minutes or 40 minutes of iPad. Otherwise, no. Our daughter, our kids, my son is 8, 9 years old. He still hasn't drank Coca-Cola. We don't allow them to drink sodas. They only drink water.
And both.
They eat healthy foods. He tried Prosecco a couple of times on New Year's, like you can have Prosecco. So, we try to do as best as we can during this period because sooner or later they're going to grow up and they're going to do their own thing. But you can protect them. Have good food. Don't have preservatives. Try to keep it. Yeah. And I mean, I see you have a little section for your kids where they do arts and they play and things like that. So it's not just iPad all the time.
I think in San Diego we're kind of lucky because of the weather. Like I lived in Canada, I grew up in Canada, and the cold is 9 months of the year. You're in the tundra for 9 months of the year. You're frozen. What are you going to do? This is what you're going to do in video games because there's nothing else to do.
I didn't know you were from Canada. I thought you were from like East Coast somewhere or something.
No, I grew up in Toronto.
New York. Oh.
Yeah, I grew up in Toronto. And it's...
Bukharian Jew community in Toronto?
There's a lot of Jews there. Yeah, there's Israeli Jews and there's all kinds of...
Yeah, but Bukharians, they stand like... You guys are different from Ashkenazi and everybody else.
Of course. We're not Sephardi either. We're not Mizrahi Jews. We're not there. There's just a lot of Jewish sects or whatever you want to call that. Not sects. The system of belief is pretty much the same, but the cultural aspect makes a big difference.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like
because you guys speak Farsi, also.
Right? But we're also from the part of the region where you have the Koreans, the Chinese, Uyghurs, Europeans, Persians. It's such a melting pot over there. So it's like,
But you guys kept your identity. That's the best things. Because I remember I've done so many of the Jewish holiday things at the wedding hall, and Simchat Torah, the whole thing. And you guys kept it even better than most of the Ashkenazi Jews. Because a lot of Ashkenazi Jews get kind of whitewashed, so they're like, they don't even. A lot of them won't be religious. They won't even go to a synagogue or anything. But you guys have the tight communities, and you get married within the community.
Yeah, there was less assimilation, definitely.
Yeah.
But we didn't, because during the Holocaust too, right? I mean, a lot of Europeans came down to our region.
Yeah.
Because with that programs and all that. But the ones that moved to Europe, to America. So this is what Americans know. They know European Jews, Latkes and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Which I've never heard of.
They've never heard of you guys.
No, they don't heard of any other Jew besides the white Jews here.
Yeah.
Right? And the American Jews, because they're all over Hollywood and all this.
Yeah.
But
they control the weather and everything.
Right. And they're culturally quite different.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, like... of course, like when it comes to like the Torah and the Jewish studies and all that, they're the same, but not when it comes to culture.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. But there's I've so to me, like, obviously there's like three types of obviously Jewish people for me, and so there's the Bukharian Jews, then there's the mountain Jews.
Yeah, there's a lot of them in Canada
Baku
too.
from
There's
the
a lot of them
Caucasus
in
area,
Israel too, and New York.
and so the Bukharians and the mountain Jews are very very similar.
Oh, very
in a lot
similar.
Of ways.
Yes,
Tate-
foods are similar. Demeanors are similar. Very culturally.
and sometimes a lot of times you guys look very Armenian too. Like sometimes I'm like, dude, this guy is Armenian for sure. Like Ruben.
Oh,
When I look at
100%.
Ruben, I'm like, dude, you are Armenian.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I'm Jewish, and so we kind of get that dark skin, same features, because again, correct me if I'm wrong, but Bukharian Jews are descended from Iran, aren't they?
Yes.
Okay.
No. Okay, so I did my 23andMe. I'm 99.9% from the city of
course.
Ur, Mesopotamia, which is basically on the border of Iraq and Iran.
Yeah, that's where
So-
they came from.
Yeah, it's that reason.
I mean, there's a reason
It's
why
that-
you speak
it's that
Farsi.
reason. Well,
Because you guys, there's a reason you guys know Farsi, is
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
from that region.
it's a dialect. It's a dialect.
It's a dialect. Also, you guys then moved to Tajikistan, to the country that also speaks Farsi.
Well, yeah, because they took over, right? The
Yeah.
Persian king, he built his hub there. For
Afghanistan
the
and
Silk Road.
Tajikistan, I think they both, Afghans speak Farsi, Tajiks.
Dari, they speak Dari.
Dari,
Afghans, yeah.
No, there's a melting pot there too. They
Oh,
have like
yeah.
5 or 6, Pashto, Urdu, Farsi.
Exactly.
Because you got Pakistan next on the
Yes.
border, so there's...
The Pashtuns claimed that they're one of the lost tribes,
Yeah,
which is very interesting. There's a lot
But
of them.
interesting life we live in.
Oh my goodness.
Have you been back to Uzbekistan?
Unfortunately, no. My family has, my parents have, and they reminisce, of course.
It's
but
becoming Samarkand. Uzbekistan is becoming a very big, huge tourist attraction,
massive.
and so many
Massive.
of your people go there now and post, and everyone's having a good time. I think we should go back. I haven't
I
been
would
back
love
since
to.
'92, so
I would love
go.
to.
Hell yeah!
You want to do
We
it?
agree? Yeah, let's do
Wanna do
it.
it? I'm serious.
We'll record the podcast over there. Yeah.